Hello and welcome. What is up, everyone? It is the Brotastic Bro, and now I am back here with another series instead of just another video. We are starting a new series, and I want to, in particular, focus on teams that have won the championship. That could include the Super Bowl, that could include NBA championships, the World Series, or any other major sport. I need you guys to understand it takes almost the absolute perfect scenario for your team to be able to win a championship. And what I mean by the perfect scenario is something that I will explain in greater detail in the future. But in this series, I'm going to break down just how many different factors had to come together in order for a team to be able to reach a championship run. And what I mean by that is that the margin for error is so incredibly low, as well as all the other odds and variables that go on throughout the season that are usually completely out of control of the team that eventually ends up winning it all. I do intend to use quite a few different examples of championship teams throughout this video. I want to start by actually focusing on the Denver Broncos in the late 1990s. A team who had a Hall of Famer in their quarterback, running back, tight end, and several defensive positions. The catalyst of everything for their championships, which they had won in the late 1990s, was undoubtedly their quarterback, John Elway. And Elway is an interesting story in and of himself, as he refused to play for the team that drafted him at the time, the Baltimore Colts, as well as going to the extent of refusing to play and even stating, "As I currently stand, I play baseball," on his draft day, to spite the team which drafted him and try to force them to play their hand in dealing him to a team on the West Coast. His mission was simply not to play for the Baltimore Colts, which in hindsight was a smart decision, as soon after that draft they would then relocate to Indianapolis, and ladies and gentlemen, this team would not find relevance until they draft Peyton Manning. Now, the reason the Broncos are the perfect example of why you need a perfect scenario in order to win a championship. In this one, they won back-to-back Super Bowls in 1997 and 1998. They had their quarterback, the catalyst, the man who really they had to rally behind, who had 15 years of experience in running the offense, who had been to the Super Bowl multiple times before, only to get smashed by the Giants and then destroyed by the 49ers when they, ironically enough, finished their last repeat Super Bowl championship in 1989. We're talking about a player who had to have his team in win now mode because they knew there was less than 2 or 3 years left to capitalize on his ability, and he made the most out of his last few years, ending with his very last game actually being a Super Bowl championship. Keep in mind, the only other player to ever do that also played for the Denver Broncos, ironically enough, in Peyton Manning. Of course, the man who I said brought relevance to the team that John Elway refused to play for. Kind of a crazy coincidence now that we think about it. Not only did they have a Hall of Fame generational great quarterback, they also had a running back that only played about 4 good seasons and still was able to make it into the Hall of Fame for just how dominant he was. And that particular running back is Terrell Davis. Now, another player that you may or may not already be familiar with, if you're a sports fan, you more than likely are, due to his success and relevancy for his time on the show Skip and Shannon Undisputed, it, ladies and gentlemen, is Shannon Sharp. He is an absolutely amazing tight end to look back on, and he's won Super Bowl championships with multiple different teams. And it was not a coincidence that he would be one of the rallying forces of that late 90s Denver Broncos team. Along with those three, they also boasted Steve Atwater at safety on defense, one of the greatest safeties to ever play the sport of football, let alone being the franchise great that they rallied behind for such a long time. Not only that, I also would like to mention key free agent acquisitions they had picked up around this time. They had Bill Romanowski at linebacker, and his story, his career in and of itself is all over the place. As for example, he was involved in a controversy such as spitting in the face of San Francisco 49ers wide receiver J.J. Stokes, the team he formerly played on, which actually released him. And there is a crazy story revolving his time in San Francisco, but I don't want to resolve or even focus on that right now. I want to focus on those championship Denver Broncos teams. They had Romanowski, and they also picked up a player who was a Kansas City Chief his entire career for I believe 7 or 8 seasons in Neil Smith. So that gave them a lot of intel, which came down to help them in a crucial matchup playing against the Kansas City Chiefs at the time. Because in that era, and regardless even currently, winning the division is still absolutely everything in football, as you play the same 3 teams twice, so 6 games of each season is the division. In order to be a championship team, you have to beat your division. On wide receiver, they also had players like Rod Smith, a fantastic player throughout his time in Denver, and Ed McCaffrey. And if you're unaware of him, all you need to know is he is the father of C-Mac Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, his career was quite different. This man was a lot taller than Christian McCaffrey was, so he played quite a different role, as well as it being quite a different era. But ladies and gentlemen, don't ever forget one of the greatest blocks ever committed in all time was a play where he destroyed the defender from the Green Bay Packers. That being said, with everything accounted for, they had several key players at the end of their career, in particular their quarterback and the quarterback of their defense in Steve Atwater to rally behind, and then they had young generational talent, the likes of which we still have not truly seen, in the forms of Shannon Sharp and Terrell Davis, as well as a fantastic receiver core, a strong line on both sides, and a fantastic coach in Mike Shanahan, who of course is the father of 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan, who my previous video was on. So that being said, there are so many different factors that go into winning a championship, but I just want to go through and give you guys a few examples of players that came into the league at the perfect time and ended up linking up with some of the greatest teammates they could have possibly found, which resulted in them having fantastic careers and being able to win championships. So that being said, the team I focused on for this specific video is the Denver Broncos of the late 1990s, but I plan on making this continued into a series, so let me know what other championship teams you would like a more in-depth dive on, or any other dynasties you may not be familiar with, and I'll be sure to get a new video out. If you're still watching, man, thank you so much for your time out your day to watch these videos. Please leave a like and subscribe, and let me know if this is what you want me to keep working on moving forward.